I think 18 is the correct age for becoming an adult. Patty. I don't think that if a 10-year-old kid watches an adult show, then that kid is never a child again. Andy. Most kids who watch TV shows know they are not real. There are, of course, many things to learn from such comments. But their main lesson for me is that children themselves are a force in preserving childhood. Not a political force, certainly, but a kind of moral force. In these matters, perhaps we can call them a moral majority. Children, it would seem, not only know there is value in being different from adults, but care that a distinction be made. They know, perhaps better than adults, that something terribly important is lost if that distinction is blurred. I will stand by the theme of the book. American culture is hostile to the idea of childhood. But it is a comforting, even exhilarating thought that children are not. Neil Postman, New York City, 1994. Introduction. Children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. From a biological point of view, it is inconceivable that any culture will forget that it needs to reproduce itself. But it is quite possible for a culture to exist without a social idea of children. Unlike infancy, childhood is a social artifact, not a biological category. Our genes contain no clear instructions about who is and who is not a child, and the laws of survival do not require that a distinction be made between the world of an adult and the world of a child. In fact, if we take the word children to mean a special class of people somewhere between the ages of 7 and, say, 17, requiring special forms of nurturing and protection, and believed to be qualitatively different from adults, then there is ample evidence that children have existed for less than 400 years. Indeed, if we use the word children in the fullest sense in which the average American understands it, childhood is not much more than 150 years old. To take one small example, the custom of celebrating a child's birthday did not exist in America throughout most of the 18th century. And in fact, the precise marking of a child's age in any way is a relatively recent cultural habit, no more than 200 years old. To take a more important example, as late as 1890, American high schools enrolled only 7% of the 14 through 17-year-old population. Along with many much younger children, the other 93% worked at adult labor, some of them from sun-up to sunset in all of our great cities. But we must not confuse at the outset social facts with social ideas. The idea of childhood is one of the great inventions of the Renaissance, perhaps its most humane one. Along with science, the nation-state, and religious freedom, childhood, as both a social structure and a psychological condition, emerged around the 16th century and has been refined and nourished into our own times. But like all social artifacts, its continued existence is not inevitable. Indeed, the origin of this book is, in my observation, that the idea of childhood is disappearing, and at dazzling speed. Part of my task in the pages to come is to display the evidence that this is so, although I suspect most readers will not require much convincing. Wherever I have gone to speak, or whenever I have written on the subject of the disappearance of childhood, audiences and readers have not only refrained from disputing the point, but have eagerly provided me with evidence of it from their own experience. The observation that the dividing line between childhood and adulthood is rapidly eroding is common enough among those who are paying attention, and is even suspected by those who are not. What isn't so well understood is where childhood comes from in the first place, and, still less, why it should be disappearing. I believe I have some intelligible answers to these questions, most of them generated by a series of conjectures about how media of communication affect the socialization process, in particular, how the printing